Last I saw, Packers are only favored by 3.5 over the 1-6 Detroit Lions this weekend. How you feeling about that, Packer fans? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I am your host, John Delray. Today we are diving into Packers versus Lions, the matchup coming up this Sunday. What has quickly, very weirdly become a must-win game for the 3-5 Green Bay Packers. Now, like I said, they're going up against the 1-6 Detroit Lions, a very interesting divisional team that oftentimes plays better than its 1-6 record, but boy, at the same time, you see why they're 1-6. We're going to dive into some numbers today and go over the details as to what are the key components of this matchup and how are the Lions 1-6 in spite of some things actually going their way for once. But first, an injury update for all of you. We're at that point in the year, there's a lot of injuries going on with the Green Bay Packers. First and foremost, Allen Lazard, wide receiver for the Packers. He did practice today, but Matt LaFleur said in his press conference this morning that he was going to be given the weekend, really up until game time, to be making a decision on whether Lazard would be playing or not. David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Christian Watson, they were all back at practice today. Now, I'm recording a little too early to know if they're full practice participants or just limited, but we do know that this morning they were at practice doing at least some stuff. So you got to think that means a good thing, right? Especially for Bach and Elton. For Christian Watson, it probably means that he's progressing through the concussion protocols as he should be to hopefully open up this offense and actually play this Sunday. And then the last update isn't as happy. Devondre Campbell still not practicing because of that knee injury, nor is Shamar Jean-Charles, the depth corner and special teamer. We've said all along it looks rather unlikely that Campbell will be playing this weekend, so we'll see. I still tend to doubt he'll be playing. It looks like Quay Walker is going to be stepping up into that inside linebacker 1 role, and that means some additional responsibilities that we'll be getting to in just a little bit. So who are these Detroit Lions? Who are these people from Detroit? Well, they're led by Dan Campbell, the ferocious, trying to think of the right word, the articulate, if not tactful, head coach of the Detroit Lions who wants to eat everybody's kneecaps. But ultimately, this team is 1-6. That's what they are. They are still the Detroit Lions that we've come to expect over the last several years of just having a lack of success on the football field. But this year, they are trying some things differently. And it's just one of those things. The Lions, the organization is still doing what it does, but you see hope in this team. You see progress, even if they are 1-6. Dan Campbell's in his second year as the head coach of the Lions. He has a total record of 4-19-1 so far in his coaching career for the Detroit Lions. These are slightly different Lions than what you got to know last year. They did make some key additions, such as Chris Board, the linebacker. He's actually their top-rated defender on the season per PFF. They also added DJ Shark, the wide receiver, for their offense. They drafted Aiden Hutchinson in the first round. They also drafted the wide receiver Williams in the first round, but he has been unable to play as he's still recovering from a knee injury. Their biggest loss was probably Trey Flowers, the edge player that they've had for years. They moved on from him in a cap savings move this offseason. So looking at the Detroit Lions a little bit more, looking at their offense, that's where the good things are happening for them. The Detroit Lions are putting up 24.7 points per game, and they're doing it with 136 rushing yards, 258 passing yards. That ain't bad. Where Jared Goff is having the vast majority of that success for the passing attack that's getting 258 yards is actually mostly in the middle of the field. When you look at his spreads, where is he having the most success? Where does he have the highest completion percentage? It basically is the middle of the field from line of scrimmage up until 20 yards. I would say the 10 to 20 yard space, that true like intermediate throws, is where Jared Goff is having his most success on the season, and to narrow that more, in the middle of the field. So a key factor for the Green Bay Packers defense will be not allowing Goff to have time to get to routes that are developing across the middle. You have to know as well that part of the reason they've had success in the middle of the field is because of their running backs, DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, both who are capable receiving running backs. It's been a big part of the success for Goff thus far. They also have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yes, brother to Equiminius, the substantially more successful brother to Equiminius, who did miss one game earlier the year, but he is having a very successful sophomore campaign. But to look at their offensive line is where things really start to fall apart a little bit for the Detroit Lions. Yes, they're putting up 24.7 points per game, one of the highest metrics in the NFL. But their offensive line per PFF is a very run-mauling group. They do very well. They are very aggressive. They are a good run-blocking unit. Where they struggle, however, has been in pass pro. Penei Sewell is one of the only top-ranking offensive linemen that they have that actually protects the pass well. The rest of them grade out poorly, like really, really poorly. So a key component of this game will be the Packers getting pressure on Goff and not allowing him to sling it out over the middle of the field. If you want to know about the turnovers for the Detroit Lions, they've got -5 throughout the year. That's one of the worst metrics in the NFL. They've gotten only 6 turnovers through their first 7 games, not even 1 turnover per game. Trust me, the Packers aren't exactly much better in that regard, but the Lions are slightly worse. Looking at their defense, this is why the Detroit Lions are 1-6. Their offense is doing pretty healthily. Their defense, holy sweet goodness, this defense is rough. Here are the numbers for you. Thus far through 7 games, they have given up 1,084 rush yards on the ground. That is 154.9 yards per game. That is the 3rd worst in the NFL. And if that's not bad enough, because we know that the Packers also have a god-awful run defense thus far, and they're down there in the cellar with the Lions. But the flip is, the Packers really only get run on in terms of just raw numbers. In terms of pass defense, the Packers are one of the best teams in the league, so they're only bad at 1. The Lions are awful at run defense. Here's their numbers for pass defense. They've given up 1,865 yards through the air already. That's 266.4 yards per game. That is the sixth worst number in the NFL. So you've got the 3rd worst rush defense, the 6th worst run or pass defense. Okay, how about points? Maybe they're bend but don't break. No, they're 1-6. They break a lot. They're giving up 32.1 points per game. That is the worst number in the NFL. If ever there was going to be a game that your Green Bay Packers figure out how to play offense again, I would hope it would come against this defense. Right? I would hope. Now, what are the true matchups in this game that matter the most? How is it that the Packers can make sure that they don't fall even farther into the cellar of 3-6? How can they make sure that it's the Lions who take the loss and move to 1-7? You know, Cassidy Hill on Twitter, if you don't follow Cassidy Hill, you really should. She's wonderful on Twitter, giving a lot of locker room perspective for the Packers. And she said that today, yes, Friday, pre the Detroit game, this Packer locker room was the loosest it's been in a long time. Azul Douglas was asking questions about how many chicken nuggets can you fit in your empty stomach. Eric Stokes is talking about missing Victory Mondays. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know. And I know a lot of you out there are going to have really strong opinions about this. I get it, because the last time that LaFleur said that he wants them to play loose to be happy, they went out and lost again. But there is really something to be said about enjoying your job and performing well. Right? We know that when you don't like your job, you don't do as well at your job. I mean, at least for most people, right? Or you find certain vices to help you get through your job. Right? Like we don't want the Packers doing that. We do want them to be loose and happy. But the problem is, when you're in a game and you're down 17, or you're losing to the Giants or the Jets or the Commanders, you got to have some intensity behind it too. You can't just be stagnant, because stagnant isn't happy either. Stagnant is nothing, which is what we've seen mostly from the Green Bay Packers. And I went off on Wednesday about how Aaron Rodgers was saying on Pat McAfee that the Buffalo game was the first time in 8 games the Packers actually appeared fired up and ready to play football. 8 games. Completely and utterly inexcusable and a failure on several levels for the 2022 Green Bay Packers. So, is being loose in the locker room right now a good thing? I truly don't know. I am not psychologically intelligent enough to tell you. Nor am I there to see it myself that I can walk out with my own assessment. But what I can say is, even for losing teams, the locker rooms where guys just walk around pissed every second of every day generally don't get a lot better. Success breeds happiness. Happiness breeds more success. So we'll see. This has to be a get-right game for the Green Bay Packers, no doubt about it. So what are the key matchups? Matchup number 1, I already touched on a little bit. It's the Packers' offense against this Lions defense. This is a god-awful Lions defense. I gave you the numbers. They are bad at basically everything. And tackling, whoo-wee, they are bad at tackling. Aaron Jones should be able to go off. He now leads the NFL in missed tackle rate. Yes, Aaron Jones leads the NFL in missed tackle rate following the Buffalo game. Time for him to go exemplify that against a really, really bad tackling team. If the Packers give him more than 8 carries. Which they should. And if Bakhtiari and Jenkins are back, there is no excuse for this offensive line to continue playing poorly. Aiden Hutchinson earlier in the season did show flashes of why he was taken so early in the draft, but ultimately there are not enough playmakers on this Detroit defense to feel threatened in any way, shape, or form. So, the Packers got to do their business. If there's going to be a game where we're going to see big plays hit and the scheme actually work, it's this one. And hopefully this can be the spark to propel them into a much more difficult part of the schedule that the Packers have coming up. That's number 1. Number 2, as I said, shut down the middle of the field. Goff, it's very clear his most success comes in the middle of the field. Outside, most of the time he's about 50% throwing. Inside, it's a lot different of a story. He has success in the middle of the field. Sometimes he's still Jared Goff. Sometimes he still makes poor decisions, throws interceptions. But where most of his success is coming is in the middle of the field. So you have to use your secondary to shut it down. You cannot allow the Lions to get easy completions across the middle. You cannot allow the Lions' offensive line to hold off Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, Quay Walker, who hopefully continues blitzing. The Detroit offensive line has to be manhandled in this game, and you cannot allow Goff to hit the big play or the play in the middle of the field. And then number 3. Quay Walker going against DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams. Both of Detroit's running backs are highly capable. Jamal Williams, former Green Bay Packer, we know him well. He is very good at some things. DeAndre Swift, very good at some things. They are both very good running backs. This is not necessarily the best game to be without Devondre Campbell. It's just not. You'd like your inside linebackers, you'd like your best inside linebackers to go against a team with good running backs. But here we are. He's still nursing his knee injury, so Quay Walker. Now, Joe Barry did say in his press conference last night that Quay Walker will assume the dotted helmet, meaning that it being the helmet that gets the play relays, and he has to communicate the play to the rest of the defense. It's a tall order for a rookie, but Quay Walker did it a bunch in the preseason when Devondre Campbell wasn't playing. He does have a little bit of experience doing it. But you got to believe this is a game that the Packers, if Devondre Campbell winds up not playing, they would love to have Chris Barnes back and healthy. But he's not yet. So you got Quay Walker and then probably Isaiah McDuffie when you actually utilize 2 inside linebackers. But Quay has a much more important role this week having that communication helmet. I still hope in spite of that, I really do. I hope that in spite of having that communication helmet, They still don't have him make a lot of choice. They still just tell him what to do. Tell him to blitz the quarterback. Tell him to spy. Tell him to cover this guy. Whatever. We've seen that Quay Walker, when he's at his worst on the football field, is when he's making decisions. We know that that is not his best trait at this point in his career, so stop having him do it. I don't care if Devondre Campbell is hurt. Have him play to his strengths, which is his athleticism. Don't have him making choices. You know, and I have one other point to touch on before I wrap up about the defense. Joe Barry in his press conference yesterday said that Darnell Savage is struggling. Yeah, no, we know. Darnell Savage is playing very poorly. He is, no doubt about it. Joe Barry also said that he has the faith that Darnell Savage would make an unbelievable nickel corner. We've seen the traits. I mean, we can't completely argue with that. Like, we've called for Savage to get some star snaps before. We've called for Savage to be more playing up the line, even the robber position, whatever. But nickel can be a part of that. He's got the tools, sure. But you keep on trotting out Rasul Douglas in the slot. Why? What? Why? If you believe that Darnell Savage is bad at his current position, which he is, it's not a belief, it's a fact. And you also believe that Darnell Savage would make an unbelievable nickel, and yet Rasul Douglas, who is a very good cornerback, who you are playing horribly out of position in the slot, where he does not belong, what am I missing? Joe Barry, what am I missing? Matt LaFleur, what am I missing here? Maybe try Savage at nickel? Yeah. Maybe try Douglas at safety? Look, you had Douglas do some safety in the preseason, and everyone lost their freaking minds about it. Because you refuse to have Jair either exclusively shadow the one or play in the slot very much. So I don't know what your grand plan was. When you signed Douglas back, you got Jair healthy, Stokes is continuing to develop. You loved your three-headed monster at cornerback. What was your plan? Who was going to play slot when you got all those guys back on the roster? Was the plan always Rasul? Why? He's not a slot corner. The most successful of the bunch would have been Jair. But you've already shown you don't want to do either one of two things with Jair. You just want him to play like he's always played. Even though he's making more money than any corner in the history of the game. If ever there was a guy who should be matched up against wide receiver ones no matter what, it probably is the guy who's getting paid to do it. And you experimented with Rasul Douglas playing safety. What? I mean, could Rasul not play cover two? Of course he can. So what are you afraid of even trying? That it's going to get worse? I mean, what? You're afraid of Darnell Savage missing tackles closer to the line? He's already doing it. This has been a very frustrating year to be a Packer fan, hasn't it? Lots of things that seem so obvious that the team just doesn't want to do. You know, and this is the first year that I have found myself as a Packer fan just sitting around saying, what are they doing? Normally I could rationalize it. I could find a reason to believe in what they were doing, just be the happy little fan going, nah, we don't need to question, they're fine. But like this year, man, I love this team. I will always love this team. I just don't get what they're doing. If you think Savage is going to be an unbelievable nickel and you're actually telling the truth, then move him to nickel. I know it throws some stuff off, but like, try. You're not going to be way worse off. Or if Savage is playing that poorly, put in Rudy Ford. Rudy Ford, in the limited snaps that we've seen, played a really good safety. I mean, Yeah, it was really limited, but like he played pretty well. Certainly was a willing tackler, certainly brought energy to the defense. Neither of those things can you say is true about Darnell Savage at all right now. I don't know. Should the Packers win this game against the 1-6 Detroit Lions? Yes. Absolutely, unequivocally. Will they? Oh, God, I hope so. Do I think they will? Yeah, I do. Call me an idiot. Call me a homer. Whatever, fine. I don't care. I do think they'll beat the Detroit Lions. I don't even want to think about a possibility other than that. I do think they'll beat the Detroit Lions. I think they'll cover the spread, which is only 3.5 points. And maybe, just maybe, this can be the game that puts a smile back on all of our faces and gets the Packers back in the win column. Thanks so much for checking out Lombardi Time Brews. It means a lot that you are here each and every video that you watch, and especially if you are a subscriber. We now are nearing 200 subscribers, which I am so incredibly thankful for. We've only been a channel for coming up on 9 short weeks, and we're approaching 200 subs. Thank you so much for being a part of it. If you haven't yet, hit like, share, subscribe on this video. Go have a great day. Have a great weekend. And as always, go Pack Go.